Mark sat on a cold, hard bench, his hands covered in dirt from a long day's work at the city's waste plant. He stared down at his worn-out boots, his heart heavy. No one here knew he was worth millions. But that's exactly how he wanted it. How did I end up here? Mark thought, as the stench of garbage filled the air. A year ago, he had lived in luxury, surrounded by people. But none of them truly cared about him. He had all the money in the world, but still felt completely alone. Maybe now, I'll finally find someone who sees me for who I really am, not for my money. Mark sat on a cold, hard bench at the waste plant, staring down at his dirty hands. A year ago, he was a rich businessman living in a mansion. Now, he worked in a smelly place sorting trash, but no one here knew he was a millionaire. He had everything money could buy, but there was one thing he couldn't find: love. Feeling lonely, Mark made a plan. He would hide his wealth and live like an ordinary man. He sold his fancy cars, moved into a small apartment, and got a low-paying job. It wasn't about the money anymore, it was about finding someone who loved him for who he truly was. Mark's new life was nothing like the one he had left behind. Instead of fancy dinners and expensive suits, he now wore worn-out boots and worked long, tiring hours. At first, it felt strange, but slowly, Mark got used to it. He liked how no one treated him differently because they thought he was rich. As the days passed, Mark started feeling more at peace. No more fake smiles or people pretending to like him. Everyone at the plant was just trying to make a living, and for the first time in a long time, Mark felt like he was part of something real. Mark's boss, Mr. Thompson, was a tough but fair man. He didn't care about anyone's past or how much money they once had. All he cared about was hard work. Mark admired that. Mr. Thompson didn't know Mark's secret, and Mark liked it that way. He was just another worker to him, and that made him feel normal. Mark worked hard every day, lifting bags of trash and sorting through waste. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. The people around him didn't care who he was, just that he was pulling his weight. For Mark, that felt like freedom. One day, while taking a break at the plant, Mark noticed a group of workers laughing and talking. In the middle of them was a young woman with a bright smile. Her name was Lily. She was different from everyone else. While others complained about the job, Lily always seemed to find something good in every day. Lily's laughter caught Mark's attention, and he found himself wanting to know her better. He had met many people before, but no one like her. She wasn't interested in fancy things or money. She just enjoyed life as it was, even in a dirty waste plant. Lily and Mark became friends quickly. They spent their lunch breaks together, sharing stories about their lives. Mark told her about growing up without mentioning his wealth, and Lily shared her dreams of opening a small bakery someday. She was hardworking and kind, with big dreams but little money to make them happen. As their friendship grew, Mark found himself looking forward to work more than ever. For the first time, he felt like he was building a connection with someone who didn't care about money or status. Lily liked him for who he was, or who she thought he was. Mark wanted to tell Lily the truth about his past. He knew he couldn't keep his secret forever. But every time he tried, he hesitated. What if she didn't like him after she found out? What if she thought he had lied to her? These questions filled his mind, making it hard to sleep some nights. Instead of telling her, Mark decided to enjoy the moments they had. He helped her with small tasks at work, making her laugh whenever he could. He hadn't felt this happy in a long time, and he wasn't ready to risk losing it. Outside of work, Mark's life was simple. He lived in a tiny apartment with just the basics, no fancy furniture or decorations. He cooked his own meals and didn't have a car, so he took the bus to work. This life was so different from the one he had lived before, but it felt good. It felt real. Even though he had millions in the bank, Mark barely touched it. He didn't want to live like a millionaire anymore. He wanted to live like a regular person and see if he could find happiness without all the extra stuff. And so far, it was working. As the months went by, Mark and Lily grew closer. They started spending time together outside of work, going for walks in the park or grabbing coffee at a small cafe. Mark cherished these moments. Lily was so genuine, and every time they talked, he felt like she saw him for who he truly was. Mark knew he was falling for Lily, but he still hadn't told her the truth about his wealth. He was scared that once she knew, everything would change. So, he kept the secret hidden, even though it weighed on him more and more each day. One evening, after a long day at work, Lily invited Mark to her tiny apartment for dinner. It was a small, cozy place with homemade decorations and a sweet smell of fresh bread in the air. As they sat down to eat, Mark couldn't help but feel at home. There was something about being around Lily that made everything feel right. As they talked and laughed over dinner, Mark realized something important. For the first time in his life, he wasn't thinking about money or success. He was just happy being with someone who cared about him. And that made him want to hold on to this moment forever. But the longer Mark kept his secret, the harder it became. Every time Lily mentioned her dreams of opening a bakery or struggling with bills, Mark felt guilty. He had the money to help her, but he couldn't offer it without revealing the truth. And what would she think if she knew he had been hiding it all along? Mark knew the time was coming when he would have to be honest with Lily. But how could he do it without ruining everything they had built? The fear of losing her kept him silent, even though he knew deep down that he couldn't hide forever. As the days passed, Mark found himself spending more and more time with Lily. She would talk about her bakery dream, and Mark would listen, feeling both proud of her and guilty. He wanted to help her so badly. He could write her a check and make her dream come true in an instant. But he knew he couldn't, not without telling her everything. One evening, after another day of hard work, Lily shared a story about her childhood. She had grown up in a small town where her family struggled to make ends meet. Her dream of owning a bakery wasn't just about baking. It was about creating a better life for herself. Listening to her story, Mark realized how strong and determined Lily was. It made him care about her even more. Mark started saving his money from the waste plant job. He didn't need to, but it felt right. He wanted to understand what it was like to work hard for every dollar, just like Lily. With each paycheck, he thought about how far he had come. It wasn't about the money. It was about the lessons he was learning and the connection he was building with the people around him. Lily noticed how Mark never complained about their tough job. She admired his determination and kindness. Sometimes, she would catch herself thinking about him at night, wondering what it would be like to spend more time together outside of work. She didn't know if Mark felt the same way, but she hoped he did. As their friendship deepened, Lily started inviting Mark to more places. They went to local festivals, walked through farmers' markets, and even spent afternoons feeding ducks at the park. Each time they were together, Mark's feelings for her grew stronger. But with those feelings came the heavy burden of his secret. One weekend, Lily invited Mark to meet her friends. It was a small gathering at her friend's house. They played board games, laughed, and told stories about their lives. Mark was nervous at first, but Lily's friends were warm and welcoming. By the end of the night, he felt like part of the group. But the guilt of hiding his true identity still weighed on him. Mark knew that keeping his secret was unfair to Lily. Every day, he told himself that he would tell her the truth, but every day, he backed out. What if she didn't understand? What if she thought he was just another rich guy who couldn't be trusted? He had never felt this way about anyone before, and the fear of losing her kept him silent. One night, as they walked through the city after dinner, Lily turned to Mark with a serious look on her face. "You've become one of my best friends, Mark," she said softly. "I just want you to know that." Mark's heart raced. He wanted to tell her how much he cared about her, but instead, he smiled and said, "You mean a lot to me too, Lily." The next few weeks flew by. Mark and Lily's bond grew even stronger, and it became clear to both of them that their friendship was turning into something more. They spent nearly every weekend together, exploring the city, talking about life, and laughing over shared stories. It was the happiest Mark had felt in a long time. One day, while they were having lunch at a small cafe, Lily asked Mark about his past. "You never talk much about your life before you started working at the plant," she said, her eyes filled with curiosity. Mark froze for a moment. "Oh, it's nothing special," he replied, trying to sound casual. But deep down, he knew he couldn't keep dodging her questions forever. The more Mark avoided talking about his past, the more Lily noticed. She didn't push him, but she could tell that there was something he wasn't sharing. Meanwhile, Mark became more anxious about the moment when he would finally have to tell her the truth. He had never felt this close to anyone before, and the thought of losing Lily terrified him. One evening, after a long day at work, Mark sat in his small apartment, thinking about how much his life had changed. He had gone from being a wealthy businessman to a regular guy, working a tough job and living a simple life. And for the first time, he realized that he was happier now than he had ever been before. But the truth was still hanging over him. Mark knew the day was coming when he would have to be honest with Lily. He couldn't keep pretending forever. He wanted to tell her everything, but the fear of what she might say held him back. What if she thought he had been lying to her this whole time? What if she felt betrayed? One Saturday, Mark invited Lily to a small park near his apartment. They sat on a bench, watching the sunset. Mark could feel his heart pounding in his chest. This was it. This was the moment he had to tell her the truth. He took a deep breath and turned to her. "Lily, there's something I need to tell you," he said, his voice shaking slightly. Lily looked at Mark with concern. "What's wrong?" she asked. Mark took another deep breath. "I haven't been completely honest with you," he began. "There's something about my past that I've been hiding." Lily's expression softened. "You can tell me anything, Mark," she said gently. Mark felt a lump in his throat. "I'm not who you think I am," he said slowly. I'm actually a millionaire. I used to be a wealthy businessman, but I gave it all up to see if I could find someone who cared about me, not my money." He waited for Lily's reaction, his heart pounding in his chest. For a moment, Lily didn't say anything. She just stared at Mark, processing what he had just told her. Mark felt like his world was crumbling around him. You're rich?" Lily finally said, her voice quiet. Mark nodded. "I didn't want anyone to know," he said. "I wanted to live a normal life and find someone who liked me for who I am, not for my money." Lily was silent for what felt like an eternity. Mark's heart sank. He had ruined everything. But then, Lily spoke. "Mark, I don't care about your money," she said softly. "I care about you. But I wish you had told me sooner." Mark's eyes filled with relief. "I'm so sorry, Lily," he said. "I was just so scared of losing you." Lily sighed, her expression softening. "I understand why you did it, but it still hurts that you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth." Mark nodded, guilt washing over him. "I know, and I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't know how to tell you. I was afraid everything would change." Lily looked at him for a long moment. "Well, now I know the truth," she said with a small smile. "And it doesn't change how I feel about you." Mark felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Thank you, Lily," he said quietly. "I never wanted to hurt you." Lily smiled and took his hand. "We'll figure it out together," she said. And in that moment, Mark knew that everything was going to be okay. After Mark told Lily the truth, things felt different between them, but not in a bad way. Lily needed time to process everything, and Mark understood that. He didn't push her for answers or try to make things normal right away. He gave her space, letting her figure out how she felt about it all. Lily appreciated that. She knew Mark hadn't meant to hurt her, but it was still a lot to take in. She had never imagined that someone like Mark, who seemed so down-to-earth and real, could actually be a millionaire. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that the man she knew and cared about was still the same person. He had just been hiding a part of himself. A few days after Mark's confession, Lily called him and asked if they could meet for coffee. Mark's heart raced as he agreed, unsure of what she would say. When they met at their usual cafe, Lily smiled softly at him. "I've thought about what you told me," she began, "and I want you to know that I don't care about the money. But I do care about trust." Mark nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I understand," he said. "I should have told you sooner, but I was afraid of losing you. I've had so many people in my life who only wanted me for what I could give them, not for who I really am." Lily reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm not one of those people, Mark. I just need you to be honest with me from now on." With that conversation, their relationship began to heal. They didn't talk much about Mark's wealth after that. Lily didn't want to focus on it, and Mark respected her wishes. Instead, they focused on the things that had always brought them closer, laughing together, sharing stories, and dreaming about the future. Mark felt a sense of relief wash over him. He had been so scared of what might happen if Lily knew the truth, but now that it was out in the open, he realized that she cared about him just as much as he cared about her. He knew that their relationship had become stronger because of it. One evening, while they were sitting in Lily's apartment, Mark asked her more about her dream of opening a bakery. "You've talked about it so much," he said, "but I've never asked what kind of bakery you'd want to have. What would it look like?" Lily's face lit up at the question. "I've always wanted a small, cozy place," she said. "Somewhere people can come in and feel at home. I'd bake everything fresh every morning, bread, pastries, cakes. I'd make it a place where everyone feels welcome." As she talked about her dream, Mark couldn't help but smile. He could see how much this meant to her, and it made him want to help her make it happen. But he knew he had to be careful. He didn't want her to feel like he was trying to buy her love with his money. Mark had an idea. He didn't want to just give Lily money for her bakery, that wouldn't feel right. Instead, he wanted to help her in a way that wouldn't make her feel uncomfortable. So, he started doing research on small business loans and how to help someone start their own business without relying on a huge amount of personal wealth. A few weeks later, he brought it up to Lily. "I've been thinking about your bakery," he said, "and I want to help you make it happen. Not by giving you money, but by helping you figure out how to get a loan and make a solid business plan." Lily looked at him with surprise, then smiled. "You really think I can do it?" she asked. "I know you can," Mark said confidently. Together, they started working on the plan. Lily had the passion, and Mark had the experience from running his own business. They spent nights at Lily's kitchen table, going over ideas and drawing up plans for the bakery. It wasn't always easy, and sometimes Lily got frustrated, but Mark was always there to support her. One night, after hours of planning, Lily looked at Mark and said, "I don't think I could do this without you." Mark smiled and shook his head. "You could," he said, "but I'm happy to help. This is your dream, Lily, and I want to see it come true." In that moment, Lily realized just how much Mark believed in her, and it made her heart swell with gratitude and love. The more they worked on the bakery plan, the closer they became. It wasn't just about the business anymore, it was about building something together. Mark loved seeing Lily's excitement when they found a solution to a problem or when they talked about the little details, like what the bakery's name would be or what colors they'd use to decorate. Lily felt the same way. She had never had someone in her life who believed in her as much as Mark did. And the more they worked together, the more she realized how much she cared about him, not for his money or his help, but for the person he was. He had become her partner in more ways than one. Finally, after months of planning and saving, Lily applied for a small business loan. It was a nerve-wracking process, but Mark was there every step of the way, helping her prepare for meetings and making sure her plan was solid. They worked late into the night, perfecting every detail. The day she got approved for the loan was one of the happiest days of her life. She called Mark right away, her voice shaking with excitement. "I got it," she shouted over the phone. Mark smiled, feeling a swell of pride for her. "I knew you would," he said. "This is just the beginning." With the loan secured, Lily and Mark began looking for the perfect spot for the bakery. They toured several locations, but nothing felt right at first. Some places were too big, others too small, and a few were in neighborhoods that didn't fit Lily's vision. But they didn't give up. They kept searching, knowing that the right place was out there. Finally, after weeks of looking, they found a small, charming storefront on a quiet street. The moment Lily walked in, she knew it was the one. The space was cozy, just like she had imagined, with big windows that would let in plenty of natural light. Mark could see the excitement in her eyes and knew they had found the perfect spot. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. Lily spent her days overseeing the renovations, picking out paint colors, and ordering equipment. Mark was there every step of the way, helping with whatever he could. It was hard work, but Lily didn't mind. This was her dream, and she was finally making it come true. Mark couldn't have been prouder. Watching Lily pour her heart and soul into the bakery made him realize just how special she was. He admired her determination, her creativity, and her ability to stay positive even when things got tough. And through it all, their bond grew even stronger. After months of hard work, the bakery was finally ready to open. Lily stood outside the shop on the morning of the grand opening, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. The sign above the door read "Lily's Cozy Corner," just like she had always dreamed. Mark stood beside her, smiling proudly. "You did it," he said softly. Lily nodded, her eyes filling with happy tears. "We did it," she corrected him. "I couldn't have done this without you." Mark smiled but didn't say anything. He wanted this day to be about her. As the doors opened and the first customers walked in, Lily felt a rush of joy. This was the moment she had worked so hard for. The first day at the bakery was busier than Lily had expected. People from the neighborhood came in to try her fresh bread, pastries, and cakes. Word spread quickly, and soon, there was a line out the door. Mark stayed in the background, helping where he could but letting Lily shine. This was her day, and he was just happy to see her so happy. By the end of the day, Lily was exhausted but overjoyed. She sat down in the back room, taking a deep breath. "I can't believe how well it went," she said. Everyone loved the pastries. Mark sat down beside her, smiling. "I told you they would," he said. "You've created something special, Lily." The days that followed were just as busy as the first. Lily worked from dawn until dusk, baking fresh goods every morning and serving customers with a smile. Mark continued to help her behind the scenes, supporting her in any way he could. It wasn't always easy, but they made a great team. One evening, after a particularly long day, Lily and Mark sat together in the empty bakery, eating leftover pastries and talking about the future. "I never thought my dream would actually come true," Lily said quietly. "But now that it has, I can't imagine doing anything else." Mark looked at her, feeling proud. "You worked for this," he said. "You deserve it." As the weeks went on, the bakery became more popular. Customers loved the warm, welcoming atmosphere, and Lily's pastries were quickly becoming famous in the neighborhood. People would come in just to talk to her, and she always made time to chat with them, getting to know her customers and making them feel like part of the family. Mark watched Lily with admiration. She had a way of making everyone feel special, and it was clear that her bakery was more than just a business, it was a place where people felt at home. It reminded Mark of why he had left his old life behind. He wanted something real, and with Lily, he had found it. One day, while Lily was busy in the kitchen, a man walked into the bakery. He was dressed in a sharp suit and looked out of place among the cozy, homey atmosphere. Mark, who was helping behind the counter, recognized him immediately. It was someone from his old life, a business associate from his days as a millionaire. The man looked at Mark with surprise. "Mark? Is that you?" he asked, his eyes wide. Mark's heart raced. He hadn't expected to run into anyone from his past, especially not here. "Yeah, it's me," Mark replied, trying to sound casual. The man frowned. "What are you doing here? I thought you were living the high life." Mark felt a wave of unease wash over him. He didn't want Lily to hear this conversation, but it was too late. She had just walked out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Who's this?" she asked, looking between Mark and the man. Mark hesitated for a moment before answering. "This is someone I used to know," he said carefully. The man raised an eyebrow. "Used to know?" "We were business partners," he said, clearly confused. "What are you doing working in a bakery?" Lily looked at Mark, her eyes full of questions. Mark knew he couldn't avoid the conversation anymore. It was time to explain the full story, both to the man and to Lily. Mark took a deep breath and turned to Lily. "There's more to my past than I've told you," he began. "Before I came here, I was living a completely different life. I was wealthy, but I wasn't happy. So, I decided to walk away from it all and start fresh. That's how I ended up here." Lily listened quietly, her expression unreadable. Mark turned to the man. "I'm not that person anymore," he said firmly. "I've found something better here, something real." The man looked shocked. "You gave up all that money for this?" he asked, gesturing to the bakery. Mark smiled. "Yes, and I don't regret it for a second." After the man left, there was a moment of silence between Mark and Lily. She sat down at one of the tables, her hands folded in front of her. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked softly. Mark sat down across from her, feeling the weight of her question. "I didn't want to bring that part of my life into this," he said. "I didn't think it mattered anymore." Lily looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of emotions. "It matters because it's part of who you are," she said. "I don't care about the money, Mark, but I do care about knowing the real you. You don't have to hide any part of yourself from me." Mark nodded, feeling a sense of relief. "I promise, no more secrets," he said. As the weeks went by, things began to settle down again. Lily and Mark's relationship grew stronger, built on a foundation of trust and understanding. Mark no longer felt the need to hide his past from her, and Lily appreciated his honesty. They both knew that what they had was something special, and they were determined to protect it. The bakery continued to thrive, and Lily became more confident in her role as a business owner. She had found her place in the world, and Mark was happy to support her every step of the way. Together, they had created something beautiful, not just in the bakery, but in their relationship as well. One evening, after a particularly busy day, Mark and Lily sat outside the bakery, watching the sunset. "I've been thinking a lot about the future," Mark said quietly. Lily looked at him, curious. "What about it?" she asked. Mark hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I want to stay here, with you. I don't want to go back to my old life. This is where I belong." Lily smiled, her heart swelling with love for him. "I want that too," she said softly. "I can't imagine my life without you now." Mark reached for her hand, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. For the first time in a long time, he felt truly happy. He had found what he had been searching for all along, not in wealth or success, but in love and connection. As Lily's cozy corner grew more popular, the bakery became the talk of the town. Customers came from all over to taste her fresh-baked goods, and soon, food critics and bloggers started taking notice. One day, a well-known food blog featured the bakery in an article, calling it the best hidden gem in the city. At first, Lily was thrilled. Business was booming, and she loved seeing her bakery filled with happy customers. But as more people came, things started to change. The bakery became busier than ever, and Lily found herself struggling to keep up with the demand. She was working longer hours, and even though Mark helped as much as he could, it was becoming overwhelming. Mark noticed the change in Lily. She was exhausted, and the stress of running the bakery was starting to take a toll on her. One evening, after a particularly hectic day, Mark sat down with her in the back room. "Lily, you're doing an amazing job, but you can't keep doing this on your own," he said gently. "You need help." Lily sighed, rubbing her tired eyes. "I know," she admitted. "But this bakery is my dream. I'm afraid that if I bring in too much help, it won't feel like mine anymore." Mark smiled softly. "It will always be yours," he reassured her. "But you don't have to do everything alone. Hiring a few more people will help you keep the quality without burning yourself out." After thinking about what Mark said, Lily decided to take his advice. She hired 2 part-time bakers and a few more people to help with serving customers. It wasn't easy for her to let go of some of the control, but she quickly realized it was the right decision. With the extra help, she could focus on creating new recipes and interacting with her customers the way she loved. The change made a big difference. Lily was less stressed, and the bakery continued to thrive without her having to work every waking hour. Mark was proud of her for taking that step, and he admired how she always found a way to make things work. Together, they were a team, and they were learning how to navigate the challenges of success. One evening, after a particularly busy day, Mark surprised Lily with a small celebration. He had closed the bakery early and set up a candlelit dinner in the back room. "I thought we could take a moment to celebrate everything you've accomplished," Mark said, smiling as Lily walked in. Lily's heart warmed as she looked around at the effort he had put into making the evening special. "You didn't have to do all this," she said, but her smile showed how much she appreciated it. Mark shrugged playfully. "I just wanted to remind you of how far you've come. You've built something incredible, and I'm proud of you." They sat down to enjoy the dinner together, grateful for the quiet moment amid the chaos of their busy lives. As the months went on, Lily and Mark found a balance between work and their personal lives. The bakery continued to be a success, but they made sure to take time for themselves. Every now and then, they would close the bakery for a day and take a trip to the countryside or spend the day at home, just relaxing. During one of those quiet days, Mark brought up something he had been thinking about for a while. "Lily, do you ever think about what's next for us?" he asked. Lily looked at him, intrigued. "What do you mean?" she asked. Mark smiled softly. "I mean, do you ever think about what our future looks like? The bakery is amazing, but I can't help but think about what else we could build together." Lily thought about Mark's question for a moment before answering. "I love what we've built with the bakery, but I've been thinking about the future too," she admitted. "I don't want to be tied down to just this one thing forever. Maybe one day we could open a second location, or even do something completely different." Mark nodded, encouraged by her response. "I like the sound of that," he said. "I want us to keep growing together, both in business and in life." Lily smiled, feeling excited about the possibilities. "Whatever we do, we'll do it together," she said, taking his hand. They both knew that whatever the future held, as long as they had each other, they could handle it. One day, a business opportunity presented itself in the form of a large investor who wanted to help expand Lily's bakery into a chain of stores across the city. It was a tempting offer, one that could bring them even more success and financial security. But Lily wasn't sure. Expanding on such a large scale would mean giving up some control and changing the personal, cozy feel of her bakery. Lily and Mark spent days discussing the pros and cons. Mark, who had experience with big business deals, offered his perspective. "It's a great opportunity, but you have to think about what you really want," he told her. "If this doesn't feel right to you, it's okay to say no." After much consideration, Lily made her decision. She turned down the investor's offer. "I didn't start this bakery to make millions," she explained to Mark. "I started it because I wanted to create something special, a place where people feel at home. Expanding into a big chain would take that away." Mark respected her decision. "I'm proud of you for staying true to yourself," he said. "It's not easy to turn down an opportunity like that, but I know you made the right choice for you." Lily smiled, feeling at peace with her decision. She knew that success wasn't about money or growth, it was about staying true to her values and the life she and Mark had built together. With the investor out of the picture, Lily and Mark continued running the bakery as they always had. They kept things small and personal, focusing on the community they had built around them. Customers continued to come for the delicious pastries, but also for the warm, welcoming atmosphere that Lily and Mark had created. One evening, after closing up the bakery, Mark took Lily's hand and led her outside. "There's something I've been wanting to ask you," he said, his voice quiet but full of emotion. Lily looked at him, her heart racing. Mark got down on one knee and pulled out a small box. "Lily, will you marry me?" he asked, looking up at her with love in his eyes. Tears filled Lily's eyes as she looked down at Mark. She had always known that he was the one, and in that moment, everything felt perfect. "Yes," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Mark stood up, slipping the ring onto her finger, and they embraced, feeling like the luckiest people in the world. Their journey hadn't been easy, but they had found love, trust, and happiness in each other. Together, they had built not just a bakery, but a life full of meaning and connection. As they stood outside Lily's cozy corner, looking out at the city, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, hand in hand, just as they always had.